Hey there, it's Michael. Welcome to Whole Again, the show that's here in support of you creating a meaningful life and the person you're becoming. And I'm excited to share a new series with you that will air this summer as America turns 250 years old, which is still pretty young relative to many other countries across this big blue marble that we all share. The series is called A Perfectly Imperfect Union. In 2022, I rode my bike across America, from Astoria, Oregon to the Lincoln Memorial. My wife drove our RV, and she had two co-pilots, Jester and Hope, two Springer Spaniels. And when we did it, America was coming out of the pandemic, and we were hurting from things that had happened prior to the pandemic. Of course, going through what we all went through. And at that time, and this is something I still believe today, is that we were entering an inflection point. An inflection point for us to hopefully pause, breathe, and reflect on who we wish to become as individuals, as communities, and as a country. As I pedaled across America, I wanted to share America's beauty with others, her natural beauty and the beauty of her people. And I also wanted to share where we were hurting. As America turns 250, I believe Kinstugi, which is something we use as a metaphor here at Whole Again, is a perfect metaphor for where we are as a country. There's so much beauty to celebrate, and we can also acknowledge that parts of us feel broken or are broken, but we can find a way to come back together, just like Kinstugi teaches us. And when we do, we don't try to erase or cover up where we have scars or blemishes. We highlight them in gold, and we celebrate them as symbols of our strength and resilience. Kinstugi is called the golden repair, and in essence, we can see beauty in something that's perfectly imperfect. During this series, I plan to speak to at least 2 people in each state and the District of Columbia. So 102 conversations with real folk, as I like to say. We're going to let the celebrities and the big influencers have their day somewhere else. But here, I want to reach out and talk to real people and listen to their reflections as they think about America turning 250 years old. And my hope is that you'll tune in to at least one, if not all 102. Because my theory going into this is that you'll hear different perspectives. Some may be aligned with yours. Others may not. But my hope is that you hear the goodness in your fellow citizens and realize, as Maya Angelou shared with us, we are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike. We are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike. I've had the privilege of traveling all over the world and all over this country. And this belief is something that I hold deep inside of me. So yes, I do believe that we are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike. So if you're ready to meet one of your fellow neighbors, take a healthy breath in and a slow releasing breath out and get to know Chris Wozniak, or as his friends call him, simply Woz. Hey, Chris, great to see you. Thanks for being here and doing this with me.
Absolutely, Michael. It's great to see you too. Thanks for letting me be part of it.
Yeah, so people are just listening to this, they don't see it because we're not sharing the video, but I will let everyone listening. Chris has the best video background I've seen all day because he's got his 2 bicycles in the back. So I'm already biased going into this conversation with you, Chris. So I know it's going to be a good one. So besides your bikes, for people who don't know who the heck who are you, and where do you hail from?
Well, my name is Chris Wozniak, and as you know, Michael, most people know me as Woz.
Yep.
There's at least one other person with my last name who's a bit more famous than I am, who also has that nickname. I'm not related to him, although I'm using one of their products at the moment, my MacBook. So,
Okay. All right.
but yeah, so I go by Woz. I live in Colorado, and I've been here for about 22 years in Denver. But I was born in Ohio, in northern Ohio, and lived there for a few years, but really grew up in West Michigan.
Okay. All right. You got 3 states. You have the Centennial State there in Colorado, and then
I do.
a good state of Michigan, go blue. We're a go blue household from my wife's side, and a
Cool.
little Ohio. So you got 3 states covered. So pretty
Yeah,
cool. But we'll focus in on Colorado.
sure.
So Americans don't necessarily travel all that much. We go from place to place, but this is a big country. And it's hard to get to every one of the 50 states. So for someone who has never been to Colorado, what's something special about it that you would like to share?
Well, that's a great question. And to be fair, I feel like I know Colorado better these days since I've spent the most recent decades here. Well, most people, I think, when they think of Colorado and they've seen pictures, they think mountains, of course, the Rocky Mountains.
Yeah.
So that could be skiing, it could be hiking, and that's all true and it's majestic. We are the highest, we have the highest average altitude of any state overall.
All right.
I'm living at Mile High, Denver, the Mile
Yes.
High city. But what's unique or what's something special is Colorado actually has an amazingly diverse geography. So, the eastern part of the state is all grasslands. There are 2 national grasslands on the eastern half of the state, and we border Kansas and Nebraska. So I think most people can appreciate what that might look like.
Yep.
And then you have, in the western slope, so meaning west of the Continental Divide, where the Rocky Mountains go north to south. On the west side, it's very high and very dry. We border Utah on that side, as well as New Mexico and Arizona. The Four Corners area is desert.
Yeah.
Mesa Verde National Park, if anyone's ever seen pictures of that, for example. And even people who have skied are used to the pine forests and the slopes, but we also have alpine tundra. You get high enough and there's just lichen and moss and wind-blown rocks and things. So it's a really diverse state. And I'd say there's plenty to see. So I'd encourage you to go to the mountains. There's plenty to see there, but also there's a lot of other things to take in.
Yeah, no, it's a great. I had such a great pleasure going through Colorado. Although when I got into the first part of Colorado on my bike ride, it wasn't until I got to like Breckenridge where I actually felt like I could like exhale completely because the roads were quite narrow, and it seemed like everyone was towing a bunch of fun in the back, from their pickup truck. So it made it a little squirrely riding my bike there without a good bike path, but still, great mountains. And yes, the eastern part of Colorado is so much different. So yeah, I love the diversity of Colorado. So it's very cool. So I want to invite you to picture yourself at a big picnic table. It's the summer. You got your friends, you got your family around you, colleagues, business associates, you name it. You bring them all to the table, right?
Right.
And someone asks you, "Hey, Chris, what does America mean to you?" How do you respond?
Well, that's a trick question, Michael, because it means so many things, and I've thought about this a bit. And if I had to boil it down to kind of one idea, it's possibility. And there's a lot of positive connotation to that, right? And also some things that imply you're never quite getting to what you want to be or what's next. There's always something more and possible. So, as I said, I grew up in Michigan. I was fortunate to grow up in a smaller college town on the west side of the state. And aside from it not seeing the sun too often for about 6 months of the year,
Yes.
I was really fortunate to have kind of the outdoors as a backyard. Not like here, but to me, the idea of possibility was always kind of inextricably bound to this idea of exploring, of discovering the diversity of, well, what was within my reach at the time. But then I started cycling when I was a teenager, and that expanded my reach, right? So this idea of possibility to me is also linked to the kind of the landscape that we live in. And as you said, this is a huge country. Amazingly, there's so much to see. And I know you've experienced that firsthand on a bike going across the country. But I think for me, possibility, I grew up in a pretty typical working class. My parents were both educators, working class family. And they always encouraged us to just see what was possible, to do our best, to just say, look, try it, put the most into the thing that you want to lean into and see what you can do with it. There was never you're going to go to do this thing or do that thing or this career path, as well as with things like sports. Hey, cycling wasn't really a big deal in the 80s, especially in small towns in Midwest America. So you described riding through the mountains, on your bike, and I'd say riding on the back roads of rural-ish Michigan in the 1980s on a road bike got some interesting interactions sometimes. So, but it was that idea of hey, just try it, So to me, that's really the kind of the core, I think, of what America represents.
Yeah, I love that. I love that notion of possibilities of like who we're becoming as individuals, but also as a community and also as a country. We're still pretty young when you look at other countries globally. We're going to be 250, but when you go to Europe, it's like wow, like
Right.
you go to Europe and some of the countries you go into, you're like, oh no, that's old. Like we're not that old.
Yeah.
So when you think about America becoming, and do you see like certain stress points or tensions that are making it difficult to really step into who we can completely become?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, we all, I think, can recognize that the notion we were founded on, right, back in 1776, I guess technically was when the Declaration was made, even if the documents weren't buttoned up for a little while after that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
De Tocqueville, I'm a bit of a history person and also a writing and literature person. So, de Tocqueville was like, it's pretty radical. I mean, everyone recognized this. It's hard to fathom right now how different it was to say, oh no, the people are going to weigh in. They get to direct things. Even in the really kind of constrained, very obviously contradictory way that it was at the time of the founding. He said, this is pretty unique in this idea of being civically engaged, right? And yes, oh, by the way, you've kicked out Native Americans and you have slaves. So there's that. And he was writing, 40 years after after independence, roughly. But that notwithstanding, it's that idea of everyone can have a voice. And we've obviously evolved a lot. And again, there's still possibility. I think we're still not there, but I think that's the tension is we were built literally from a fracture.
Yes.
Right? I mean, we broke away and it wasn't all roses, right? But it provided a place to start and an idea to move toward, right? So I think that's the tension is that we're always moving toward what we envision is possible, what the idea of everyone having a voice could be. That's the tension I see. And your question, Michael, I think was, well, what's getting in the way?
Yeah.
I'm a little older, sort of like you and I are about the same generation, I think.
Yeah. Gen Xers.
And so, we had the benefit of seeing, hey, if you wanted to communicate, you had to memorize your friend's phone number if you wanted to talk on the phone.
Yeah.
But more
Yes.
likely, you probably were like, well, let's get together. And so you had to interact. And I think that the tendency now, and this isn't a criticism, it's just a reality, is that just like we're doing now, technology's allowed us to do this cool stuff. But the rhythms of life we've gotten into make it just that we just have to kind of go out of our way to interact beyond our small circles. I think that's what's kind of getting in our way now of that idea of, to have everyone have a voice and for others to hear it, you kind of have to make an effort to listen and to
Yes.
try to connect more. And I think there's some impediments in the way that just it makes it more of an effort, I think, than what we wish it could be. But we just have to work through it. So
yeah, I hear you. It's the push for more and faster that's, I think, in some ways, it's pushed out the connection that we once had, maybe like when we were kids, or even different generations where there was more connectivity, like real stuff, could be simply on the phone. It doesn't have to be like in person. Like,
right.
We had analog phones, and we just dial someone up and we could talk for hours, right? Without seeing them. And so those moments, I think, matter. That's sort of the glue of the Kinstugi. If we can do more of that, to your point, I think we can step into that. Everyone truly has a voice that can be heard, and with that comes greater possibilities. So
and
I love what you shared. Yeah.
Thank you. And I don't want to simplify it and say this is just back in the day,
Yeah.
If we all go analog, it's going to be perfect. And I have I don't have human kids. I have dogs, but nieces and nephews, and of course friends, kids, and there's some really, really good, genuine friendships and connections that I see happening. I think the opportunity and the possibility is that we can just build on that, right, and be intentional about it, despite some of the bumps in the road.
Yes, yeah. The whole notion, I think it's good for news articles and stuff like that.
Sure.
When you see kids going to a dumb phone or just a analog phone or a flip phone. And interesting article to read. But the reality is we're not going back there. We have to find a way to use the technology that we have to further enhance connection, right? Because the smartphone brings us together today. And so it's not all bad. It's just how we're actually engaging in it and using it. And we could use it, I think, for greater connection. We just have to be really intentional about that. So when we think about a birthday, one of the first things I think of is what kind of cake are we having? So, two-part question for you.
Yeah.
What kind of cake are you serving for America's birthday? And as we blow out the candles, as we do, we make a wish. So what's the wish you have for America as the candles get blown out this summer?
Well, the cake question is, the default instinct is to say it's actually apple pie, but...
Okay. All right. That's good. You're the first apple pie reference I've heard. That's good.
And I'm a bit biased because my mom makes a wicked apple pie. And just she's one of the. My mom was pre-boomer. My parents, they're still alive and kicking, but they were a little just before the boomers, and so she's the kind of person that doesn't have recipes, right? She just sort of knows. Well, this is what you do, and you just so the crust, makes the pie, and she makes the best crust. So, and the right kind of apples, apparently, baking apples. If you,
Oh, you got to have the right apples, and the crust
uh,
makes the pie. There's no doubt
yeah.
about that. Yeah.
So apple pie. So, so we're having apple pie, probably some ice cream thrown on top.
Okay.
And by the way, I if I can, I'm going to insert a little aside here.
Yeah, sure. Go for
in the
it.
spirit of answering the what do I wish for. So I was 5 for the bicentennial,
Yes.
and at the time, coincidentally, everyone's seen the Artemis mission, and it's super cool that's kind of sparked some like, oh yeah, okay, there's a little bit of that bleeding through. I mean, it's not getting all the headlines for obvious reasons at the moment, but at the time in 76, the space program was still a pretty big deal. When I grew up, I was fascinated by space and astronauts, and I have a memory, and I also have a picture to prove that I wasn't hallucinating this in my memories of me in a bicentennial parade in our little town in a costume that my mom had sewn together. She used to make her costumes and stuff of an astronaut.
Oh, that's awesome.
I had a little patch and probably one of my dad's, military hats or something. But it was, I remember just this sense of celebration, and people were showing up as they were. Like, here's this kid, he's like in an astronaut costume. Like, I don't know what it had to do with being in the bicentennial. I didn't dress up as like a revolutionary soldier or something. It was this feeling, even at that age, of a coming together and just being in the moment, I think. What I would wish, my wish of what we could be is not to, in the spirit of Kinstugi and your work and what you're trying to do here, Michael, is look, we've become who we are because we've kind of done some things that have been big bumps in the road along the way. And from those fractures, from those injuries, from those sort of collisions, we've become who we are as a country and as individuals. And I would wish that we, sort of like I talked about the landscape, right, of Colorado. Any one of those landscapes is awe-inspiring and amazing in its own right. But as you know, having traversed the country, any landscape or anything that stands alone becomes that much more beautiful when you contrast it with other landscapes or things.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
It's the contrast that makes it pop, that makes it stand out, and makes you appreciate. Like me living in Michigan, I'm like, oh wow, I have 300 days of sun in Colorado. This is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I also appreciate where I grew up more because of the contrast of having lived somewhere that's not like that.
Yes.
So similarly, as Americans, what I would wish for us as a country is to remember that, we are incredibly diverse. We've had waves and waves and decades and centuries of voluntary and involuntary, sort of mixing and mingling of who we are. And I would say, it's easy to get overwhelmed by this sense of monolithic, like us, them, or this part of our country or our culture. And if you just look around, and this kind of technology is a great example of how can we come together in ways that maybe we're geographically limited. Maybe there aren't that many diverse voices in my area, or different voices, for me. How can I find some other people and be curious and learn some new stuff? Connect with people that I may not have otherwise connected with, or connected in a different way with people that I wouldn't have otherwise found, right? Hey, we have this in common. How cool.
Yeah.
And so I would love for us to continue to discover and really engage as individuals and as communities. I think it's easy to think about the 300 and however many million of us there are now and get overwhelmed, and instead of just simply going out the door or picking up the phone or setting up a meeting like this and having a conversation. And I'd say I would wish that we could continue to do more of that and be open to the conversation.
Yeah, start with
and what's
one.
possible.
Like one is greater than zero, right? And so then one
That's
can
right.
build into two, and then so forth and so on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, when you see the problem is so large, it can feel daunting and overwhelming, and then we just end up getting stuck, or we go back to how we, our habitual patterns or the groove that we happen to be in. So in order to
Yeah.
find this way to heal and come together, we got to get out of the groove and maybe get a little uncomfortable and start reaching out more and connecting. So, and speaking of connecting, one of the things I've been doing is the previous citizen who I chatted with, Steve from Indiana,
Yeah.
he has a question for you, and then you'll get to serve up a question for the next citizen of the country I speak with. So, Steve's question to you is, what do you wish your legacy to be, and what are you doing to make it happen?
That's a great question. For me personally, I would love my legacy to be helping other people. And in my professional life, I'm trying to focus that on our generation, Gen X, but it's really whoever I can impact to help others lean into their full potential.
Mm,
There's a midlife aspect to that. Obviously, there's this
yeah.
tendency to be like, okay, cashing out, I'm done. But I plan to be around for a while, even if it's, however many more years, something could happen. But I want to help other people kind of reignite that spark and remember that there's endless possibility. You just have to start moving in a direction and try, instead of, as you said, just sort of feeling overwhelmed and kind of staying stuck. So my legacy, I would love to be, just helping other people grow into their full potential. And what I'm doing is turning my professional attention to that now in my
Awesome. Yeah. I love that you're
years.
doing that. That's really cool. That's awesome. Oh, what question do you have for someone else?
Well, it's easy to be really negative about the state of things. So I'm
Yeah.
going to ask a very specific question, which is, what are you most optimistic about for the next decade?
Okay, cool.
And how are you making that become reality?
I like that. That's a great question. A little hope and optimism is good for the soul. We need it to get through the difficult moments. If you stop believing, it's hard to plow through the cracks and crevices and the muddy moments. So, got to find a way to keep pedaling. So, with that, I want to thank you. Thank you for coming on
Yeah.
Perfectly Imperfect and doing what you're doing to make us a stronger union. So, I appreciate you, brother.
I appreciate you making this happen. Great to see you, Michael.
Yeah. Peace.
Peace.
Chris captures something essential in his wish to celebrate our diversity. That's what makes us strong as a country. All the different perspectives. And when we include them, we can create a better tomorrow, not just for some of us, but for all of us. Of course, I think we all know that if we really want to come together, it will take more than just wishing. It will take action. And maybe that action starts with a conversation that allows us to be fully seen, heard, and appreciated, or I would say loved. One human to another, even if we don't see the world the same way. I believe that 97% of people are good. There's a like-heartedness in that goodness. And if we lead with our heart, we can be open to different mindedness. That's how we can come together and form a more perfectly imperfect union. If today's conversation resonated with you, I hope you'll share it with someone you know. And if either you or someone you know would like to join me for a conversation, please reach out. And until our next episode in our Perfectly Imperfect Union series, let's remember to celebrate our scars as golden symbols of our strength and resilience. Happy birthday, America. And don't forget to have fun storming the castle. And if you wish to learn more about creating beautiful ripples and how to prevent a bad moment from turning into a bad day, please visit my website, michaelobrienshift.com, and sign up for my newsletter called The Ripple Effect. And join us each Monday, Wednesday, and Friday here at Whole Again and discover how you can heal, grow, and become more resilient, and celebrate our scars as golden symbols of strength and resilience. Until then, remember, you can always come back to your breath. You've got this, and we've got you.